Hello and welcome back to another Learning Dune 3 episode. We are now looking at the mod matrix and how we can connect parameters together. It's a scary place for a lot of people, but once you've got your head wrapped around it, all mod matrices become pretty easy to understand and it becomes an essential tool to your sound design. And before we get started, we are going to dip into using voices. So if you haven't seen the episode covering the voices, I would advise you check the playlist out and watch the previous videos if you haven't, but more specifically the voices, because it might be a little bit confusing to you if you haven't used Dune 3 much. So the mod matrix, let's have a look. We have across the top source, amount, destination, and voices, and then we have 32 instances of parameter control here in Dune 3. The source is what controls the parameter. So if we was controlling the cutoff and we wanted to control both of these cutoffs, say we had two filters, I want the mod wheel to do that. So you choose the mod wheel as your source. That is what's going to make the parameter change. And then before the amount, jump into destination. What's that mod wheel going to control? The filters. So you assign the filter to that, and then the mod wheel, when it moves, will move accordingly. And then to make the mod wheel control how much that filter open or closes, we use the amount here. So you can see plus 65 is our amount on this first column. So that's opening from this point of the cutoff, and you can see it's at 37%. It's going to open it up another 65%. And voila, we have the mod wheel opening the filter, and we don't actually have to move this from its original point in the filter section directly. And the first question you'll probably ask yourself is, well, why can't I just automate that instead of the mod wheel? Well, the mod wheel can be assigned to multiple parameters and you can control multiple destinations within the synth. So you can see here, the mod wheel is actually controlling the second filter 1 cutoff, and you can see they're both the same, which doesn't make sense at first, but it's assigned to voice 2. So this has two voices, as you can see here. Voice 1 and voice 2 are using the same filters. If we switch between them here, you can see the oscillator is changing, but the section here in the filter is not. Now they're using the same filters, but filter 2 is opening a little bit less than filter 1 because this is 1 octave above. So the sound is brighter because it is an octave higher, and that is going to be a little bit crispier on the top and maybe a little bit too sharp in my opinion. So opening the filter less is just a natural way to stop the highs overtaking a little bit. So let's have a listen to this sound on its own. So voice 1. And you can see voice 2, when I click it, is now an octave above, so let's solo it. And if we increase the amount, initially it sounds okay, but in the mix it's sounding a little bit too bright. So instead of trying to control that with EQ in the effects bus, for example, or in your effects chain later in the mixing stage, I've just controlled it from the beginning. Made it a little less bright at the highest volume, and if I need to increase it, I can just come back and increase that, and it'll just give it a little bit more brightness. So that's the reason why they're controlling the same parameter but on different voices. Let's go back to the full sound. And you can see it still sounds bright enough. It doesn't actually sound like it's being held back too much, and it naturally sounds clean and crispy on the top still. Now, the mod matrix has a few tricks up its sleeve here in Dune 3, and specifically with the voicing section here. So let's open up the third lane and have a look what's going on. So we can see we can control all 8 voices individually. So we can say we want voice 8, if we had 8, to just do a specific parameter control with something on the keyboard or via something else in the synth. And you can see we have a few options here from voices 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, and you can see it's going up, and then it's 2 and 3, 2 and 4, 3 and 4. It's giving you a lot of options, and then it's giving you triple options here as well. And there's a lot of uses for that sort of sound design, and you can see here at the bottom odd and even. And we'll take a look at using some of those in some more of the advanced tutorials that we're going to be covering later on. So let's get on with a demonstration of adding a few extra sources and destinations to our mod matrix. So starting with the LFO, I've already set this up with a slower rate, so it's on sync mode and it's doing it basically 1 bar, and then the amount, think of this as your mix knob. I've mixed it to just less than 50%, and then when we go here we can assign LFO 1, and we can say what do we want it to control, and we're going to say for this instance oscillator 1 pan, and I'm going to say 100%. So let's have a listen to what that's doing now. So you can hear that's panning 1 bar at a time, back and forth. And if we increase the amount here, That's how far left and right it's going to be. So let's say we like it about there, and then we can control how much this LFO is actually going to do that. We don't want it too obvious because this is a lead that's going to be up front and driving the track. So something like that, you can just about hear it. So let's just say I want the higher frequencies to be more obviously panning and the lower frequencies less obviously, and we can do that by assigning them to voices. So I'm going to set up 2 instances. So I'm going to go LFO1. I'm just going to mimic exactly what I see. Oscillator 1 pan. And I'm going to say plus 29 for both for now. This is going to be voice 1 and this is going to be voice 2. So I'm happy with where it was sat from where we've just set it, but I want the second voice to pan a little bit more erratically. So I'm going to choose Edit and Solo Voice 2. And I'm going to increase it. In fact, let's just double that. So it's roughly, just do 60, just say they are 30 and 60. And then when we select unsolo, so the top part of the lead is moving more erratically than the bottom part of the lead because we've used individual voices assigned to these parameters. Now in reality I'm probably not going to do that, but let's just say we want a little bit more, and I'm just going to say 40 for now, and we're happy with that sound design, just so it don't get too annoying whilst we keep repeating this. Now this is an example of connecting a parameter that is disconnected from the synth. The LFOs do nothing until you say in the mod matrix where they go and what they do. And that is the same for the MSEGs as well. These do nothing. You can see I've already preset a ramp with a bit of a curve here, and this does nothing. It connects to nothing. You can't connect it to anything here till you go to the mod matrix and say source MSEG 1 to 4. So I'm going to say MSEG 1. And let's just say we want to control Oscillator 1's fine tune. And we want to control both voices with this. So we can leave this blank because it'll just class it as global and it's only got 2 voices, so it's going to just do it to both. Or you can choose 1 and 2 if you wanted to. And now MSEG 1 is connected to the fine tune of Oscillator 1, so it's now got a job to do within the synth. So let's have a listen to what this is going to do. So it's controlling the fine tune, so I'm just going to add a little bit of this in. So I've got it set a little bit slower, so it's never really reaching the full length of this time frame here, and that's fine. I just want to simulate a little bit of analog, just a little bit of pitch variation in there, and you can see it reaches different points as it's playing, depending on the note length. So it just gives you that little bit of less digitalization in your sound. As we know, in filter 1, you can use the envelope amount to use this filter shape here. It's connected directly. We don't actually have to set the mod matrix up to do this. So as long as this is set up how you want it, you could have it shorter or longer. This is going to determine how this interacts with the cutoff position. So let's just say that's where we want it and that's where we're happy. I'm just going to shorten that back down again. That is all set up, but you can do that in the mod matrix if you wanted to. Luckily we don't have to do this in Dune 3, but for the purposes of demonstration I can just show you we can use that to go a little bit further. So down here we have filter envelope and amp envelope, so we can say filter envelopes, and now this here is going to control something extra on top of that, and we're just going to do the same filter. So we can go to filter 1, cutoff, and when we increase that up to nearly 50% there, we can just do the same here. So there are some instances where things are already connected, but that's a dedicated envelope for the filter, so that makes sense they control that. But that gives you the option to connect it to other things. So we can say blank that out, give that the 50% here, and then that opens up us to control something else with the filter envelope shape as well. So if we're happy with the shape to control something else, that's great. Now we could open the resonance to a static position and that will all tie in together, but it sounds a little bit too much. So we could use the filter envelope here to control filter, 1 and resonance. And that's just increasing a little bit of squelch at the front, and sometimes sound design just requires a little bit of the resonance to be present to help reduce the lows or just control other aspects. And depending on what sound design you're doing, that can come in handy for adding just a little bit of character to your sound without adding too much of the squelch that a static position of the resonance would provide. As you can hear, it controls the lows a little bit. It actually controls how much of that lower boom's coming through in your sound. If we just remove that. It just equalises it out a little bit, and just controlling it with a filter envelope instead of just having a static position is desirable in some preset design. Now you can see that's global, that is controlling both voices. Again, we could just assign that to 1 or 2, or how many voices you might have, assign it to that voice, and that will give you control just over that voice. Now don't get me wrong, there is a lot more to cover in the mod matrix in terms of sound design, and we'll cover using this over multiple voices controlling different parameters as well. So this is really just to get you in the mood for understanding how the mod matrix works. And that brings us to the end of this tutorial. If you did enjoy this, please let me know down in the comments any questions about what you've seen in the video today. I will be happy to answer them. Don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe, and hitting the bell icon will make sure you get notified every 2 weeks when these videos go out and all my other content as well. So thank you very much for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.